So in this video, we're going to be continuing on. We're going to be reading about Genesis chapter 17. And this is a really insightful chapter in the Bible because it continues from Genesis chapter 16 and just the big firecrackers and fireworks that you read about in that chapter with Abraham, Sarai, Hagar, Ishmael, etc. Okay, so let's continue. Chapter 17 verse 1, and it reads, "And when Abraham was 90 years old and 9, the Lord appeared to Abraham and said unto him, I, the Almighty God, walk before me and be thou perfect. And I will make my covenant between me and thee and will multiply thee exceedingly." Okay. "And Abraham fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham. For a father of many nations have I made thee." So God's literally telling us what Abraham means, okay, and why he's calling him Abraham. Okay. "And I will make thee exceeding fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee. And I will establish my covenant between me and thee and thy seed after thee in their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto thee and to thy seed after thee. And I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God." Okay, so I'm going to stop here for a second. This is really interesting. Okay, now, the reason this is really interesting because I'm going to come from the standpoint of the narrative. Okay, so we ended chapter 16 talking about how Abraham was 66. Okay, so he was 86 years old. Notice how this piece of text starts. Okay, Abraham was 90 and 9 years old. So we're talking about 13 years later. So within those 30 years, we just literally see from one sentence to the next sentence, we hear 13 years skipped. Now, what was happening in those 13 years? We have no idea what's happening in those 13 years. Okay, but I'm going to suggest to you my take on what I believe happened in those 13 years. Okay, based on what we've already kind of read and what we're going to see in the scripture. So thinking about this from this standpoint, okay, let's just say, for example, we don't know when God started talking to Abraham, okay, but we know from at least 75 years old, Abraham was in conversation with God, and God had made him promises about receiving a specific land, being a multitude, having loads of seed, etc., being a blessed nation in the world, etc., and he will be blessed, and people that curse him will be cursed, etc. He was standing on some very big promises. Okay, and what actually happened? Well, he dwelt in the land of Canaan for 10 years, and basically, after 10 years, his wife Sarai decided to say to him, "Look, I'm not going to have any children. Just take Hagar, my handmaid, and marry her and have a child with her. Okay, and I'll be the mother." So basically, what they did, I talked about this in the previous video, they decided to take matters into their own hands. Okay, so what they was in fact literally doing was saying, well, look, we know God's got a promise for us, okay, but it's not going to happen, basically. So we're going to make it happen. That's what they did. Okay, and based on that, I believe that from the moment Abraham had Ishmael, he was literally acting and walking in his life, believing that Ishmael was going to be this promised seed and continue what God had promised him. Okay, and now this is obviously counteractive to what God had actually said to him, okay, because at the time he wasn't married to Hagar. Hagar was not even in the picture, and we'll continue to see in the scriptures that God literally doesn't even see Hagar as Abraham's wife. Okay, you'll see it through the narrative that we read. Okay, Sarai is Abraham's wife, and that's it. Okay, and obviously it was clear that God was talking about having a child, Abraham having a child with Sarai, okay, and not anyone else. And I think that's interesting because why does it skip 13 years? I believe that's exactly why it skipped 13 years, because Abraham for 13 years, in his eyes, had probably thought, well, the job's done. Okay, and notice what God says to him. He says in verse 1, I am the Almighty God. I, the Almighty God, walk before me and be thou perfect. That's an interesting way to communicate to someone. And the reason I believe he's saying walk before me and be thou perfect is because of what he's done for the last 13 years. He's been walking in his own way, basically doing his own thing for 13 years. And now God is saying to him, look, be perfect before me. And he recites all of the promises that he's said to him before. Okay, I don't think that's by mistake. I think he said all of this basically to remind Abraham, now Abraham, what's actually going on. Okay, look what he says. This my covenant which ye shall keep between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man child among you shall be circumcised. Okay, and ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant betwixt me and you. So God's basically saying now, circumcision is going to be a token or a sign between me and you for a covenant. Okay, and he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man child in your generations, he that is born in the house or bought with money of any stranger which not of thy seed. So God is saying every man needs to be circumcised on the 8th day. Okay, and it's interesting, okay, as we're going to read more and continue to see how what God's will is and what actually happens is happens in this narrative. Okay, and he says, he that is born in thy house, he that is bought thy money, must needs be circumcised, and my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised man child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant. Okay, and God said unto Abraham, as for Sarai, thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarai, but Sarah, her name. Okay, so Sarai basically kind of means like princess, sort of. Okay, and Sarah means like noble woman. Okay, so it's what God literally did with Abraham and Sarah now. Is literally he kind of elevated them, okay, to higher status, and by doing that he's literally foreshadowing or kind of prophesying what's going to happen. Okay, look what he says. He says, and I will bless her and give thee a son also of her. Okay, yea, I will bless her, and she shall be of nations. Kings of people shall be of her. Okay, then Abraham fell upon his face and laughed, and said in his heart, shall be born unto him that is 100 years old. Okay, so remember the narrative. We start, he's 99 years old, and he's saying, am I going to have a child when I'm 100 years old? Okay, and shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? Okay, so look what he's saying. Now this is the key verse, which I believe ties in what I've been talking about the previous, let's call it the lost 13 years. Look what Abraham says to God. And Abraham says unto God, oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. What is Abraham saying here? Abraham saying to God, look, God has just said, look, Sarah, he's reinstating the fact that Sarah is supposed to have the child for you. Okay, it was always supposed to be Sarah. And look what Abraham says. Abraham says, oh God, please, I would that Ishmael would live before you. So he's basically saying, let Ishmael take the place of Isaac that's going to come. That's the child that's Sarah's going to have. He's saying, look, let Ishmael be in place. Okay, let Ishmael take the place of what you're saying. Okay, and this is what makes me believe that Abraham, for those 13 years, was literally raising Ishmael to be this promised seed, which was never going to happen. Okay, and what does God say? Sarah, your wife, shall bear thee a son indeed, and you shall call his name Isaac. Okay, which means laughter. Okay, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant with his seed after him. Okay, and look what he says. He says, and as for Ishmael, I have heard you. Okay, behold, I have blessed him and will make him fruitful and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes, okay, not kings, princes, shall he begat, and I will make him a great nation. So literally, he is Abraham's son. So God is not literally going to say, look, you're going to be broke and barren and all this kind of stuff. He's going to get the blessing, but he's not going to get the covenant established with him. Okay, because that's not what God intended ever. Okay. And he says, but my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. And he left off talking with him, and God went up from Abraham. So within this whole narrative, it's kind of easy to kind of miss what's actually happening. Abraham is here talking with God, okay, which I think is really insightful and interesting. It's like he has that kind of relationship that we'll continue to read about how he converses and talks with God, okay. It's really interesting. It's something to aspire to be able to be in that kind of communication with God, basically, because believe me, God can still talk to you the way he talked here, as the scripture says, with Abraham, okay. It's just about building up a relationship. Okay, look what happens. And Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all that were born in his house, and all that were brought with his money, every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised the flesh of their foreskin in the selfsame day as God had said unto him. So notice we see this time and time again. Abraham is a man that moves as soon as God talks, he does it, okay, which is very admirable, and it's something you should aspire to do as well as a believer. When God advises you to do something, it's best to do it straight away, because that's the best time to do something, okay, because if you leave it, the longer you leave it, the harder it becomes due to excuses and loads of other different reasons, okay. What else? And look what it says, verse 24. And Abraham 90 years old and 9 when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. So he's an old man. He's nearly 100 years old, and he got circumcised. Okay, wow. And look what it says. And Ishmael, his son, 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. So notice, they did all these things, tried to work on it through their own works, basically. And God has said, look, on the 8th day, the man should be circumcised. But Ishmael is getting circumcised when he's 13 years old. So we'll read later on that Isaac gets circumcised on the 8th day. And it's just another indication and piece of text that symbolizes that, look, God's desire happens the way he wants it to happen. But man's desire, which was Ishmael, basically, is doing things not in the perfect will of God, okay? Because he's getting circumcised at 13 years old. Which should never have happened anyway. Okay, in the self-same day was Abraham circumcised and Ishmael his son. So they both got circumcised together. And all the men of his house, born in the house and bought with money of the strangers, were circumcised with him. So that ends the chapter, and we literally see Abraham here is now, we're seeing again, obedient to what God is saying. Okay, Abraham tried to upgrade and uplift and elevate Ishmael, but God said no. God said, Sarah, your wife, is going to have a child. Isaac is going to be the child I'm going to establish my covenant with. And Ishmael is not going to be the promised seed. Okay, even though you've tried to make him the promised seed, I'm not going to make him the promised seed, because that wasn't God's perfect will and God's perfect desire. Okay, and it's important for you to continually understand this, that look, don't try and take what God said to you and do your own thing. Let God's will play out in your life, and you'll continue to see the best results.